Namaste. My name is Henry Shadike. I come to you today as the director of a non-profit Canadian organization called Om Illumination. You can find out more information about our non-profit at omillumination.com. Our website is now promoting a movie about the process of self-inquiry as recommended by Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi as being the best way to realize our divine nature. One of the teachers in this movie is Reinhard Jung. Reinhard started to meditate when he was 18-years old. He became an advanced student and a meditation teacher under the guidance of Maharshi Mahesh Yogi that you see here. And then went on to study various paths of self-realization in the Buddhist traditions such as Theravada, and then the process of Vichara as recommended by Sri Ramana Maharshi. Today I am offering the first part of a long interview that I had with Reinhard. I considered Reinhard to be one of the topmost spiritual teacher when it comes to self-inquiry on the planet right now. And the good news is that you can get in touch with him and he can guide you personally in your own process of self-realization. So if this interview touched your heart, you can get in touch with Reinhard at his website for more information. So thank you, Reinhard, for this interview. Could you explain to our public, how did your spiritual life begin and when?
I was fortunate enough to have a good home, parents that were in a good sense religious, and when I was 18 I became introduced to TM. My brother had begun and he had some good effects, so I was interested, and that is when my path began. This initiation into this beautiful, simple mantra meditation changed the way I was perceiving myself, I was perceiving the world, and slowly my values changed. So that was the beginning.
How long did you practice TM meditation seriously?
I would say it was about 6 years, if I reckon, and I became a teacher of TM in 74, personally by Maharshi himself in those years, which was beautiful. It was kind of Shaktipat also included. You could feel the energy, and I was very happy. I see it as a blessing in my path. And also I noticed soon that the missionary movement of TM was not really my thing. I was not completely fulfilled with this. And I had contact with Ramana Maharshi through a book, and I always wanted to move into that direction. So that was slowly coming about by asking deep questions. What is the real meaning? What is the common denominator of all spiritual traditions? That was always very interesting for me. And it took quite a while of study and also of meditation itself to be able to get a feel for what is meant by this seemingly simple technique of who am I. It sounds so simple, but it took quite a while from that experience of meditation, which calmed my mind, and I had some beautiful, subtle experiences with it, in the first instance, self-inquiry seemed to be an intellectual approach and I'd get a hand on it. But it came by and by through the study of different religions, because self-inquiry is not restricted, of course, to Ramana. It appears in Buddhism, it appears in Christianity, and if you practice it, you get some inner understanding, I would say.
So when did you discover self-inquiry to the point where you wanted to practice self-inquiry?
Oh, the longing was there quite early, and it actually was one element that moved me away from the movement of transcendental meditation of Maharshi, which was not so easy because I loved him and I saw my future in the content of this movement, but that was impossible because it got stronger and stronger. The intuition got stronger and stronger. This is a step ahead, or a next class, I could say, this self-inquiry. It took quite a while, and precisely it was Theravada Buddhism, also other schools of Buddhism, but especially Theravada Buddhism, which trains awareness. That means you learn to watch instead of interfering. What we call ego is a sense of self which life has brought about. It's more or less the controller in us that tries to keep order, but is used by so much concepts it has learned all through life. Mm-hmm. And there's no freedom. It always keeps us separate. And all great traditions and all great masters of all traditions, never mind which time, never mind which place, point out that truth is something whole. The very word Advaita means that which is not split. What does split mean? Split means subject-object. The so-called original sin of Christianity indicates the same. We are separate from God and from life. So that is where the beauty of this direct path becomes very practical. I said all thoughts are like branches of a tree, and you can turn within towards the trunk of that tree, and that is the I thought. The I thought is this controller, and it's not our true self. It falls when we fall asleep, and it comes to life next morning, and it's always separate from all experiences. It's always hunting, and it's always limited by its past experience. That's common sense. Everyone can observe this. The beauty is that Ramana and all great sages are in accordance with him, say you can move beyond this personal standpoint and re-enter the so-called paradise. That means the unity with God and with life. This is spoken generally. But the Theravada tradition especially was a great help for my personal dilemma between this deep silence I sometimes experienced with TM and this seemingly intellectual approach of questioning the I thought.
So could you give me an example of what an exercise or a meditation look like in Theravada Buddhism?
Yeah, there are, in each school of Buddhism, and also each school of Theravada Buddhism, there are many schools. It's not easily put in one concept, but we can use a few concepts to make it practical. What you learn, many of them, for instance, start with the breath. They just observe the breath. Some do label the process of observing. So what you train is an attention which can move along with your experience. And this is something valuable. You can remain quiet inside by watching, because truth can only be accessed through attention. Truth is not something we can reach outside, and this is kind of difficult for the way our mind is trained and educated and structured. Christ said, no one comes to the Father, I am the path, and this I am is not Jesus. This is universal. And if we can get into touch with this sense of I, it's the trunk in my example I used before with the tree. That may be not very easy in the beginning, but there is preparation. And in Tiruvannamalai I showed you one way of doing it, and this can be shown practically. There are many helps and many helps for different persons also. It's not just one rigid technique, but if the mind is calm, the very word samadhi we can use as an example. Sama means silence, evenness. D is the intellect, D-H-I. So samadhi means the subtle balance of our attention, which can be trained by observing the breath. Then subtler Chittanupassana, this is Vipassana, it's quite known. The next level is observing also the mental events, the thoughts, and in that process you move back. Your standpoint becomes refined and more precise. And then you are well prepared to turn around your attention completely to ask who is observing. So this is something very, very beautiful, and it's very simple, yet it's very profound. It needs some preparation in most cases. Even the disciples of Ramana, not all of them were able to practice self-inquiry. Not at all. It's something, it needs maturity. Also Ramana said that. He would not advocate self-inquiry for one and all. His name is much connected with this because it's very beautiful technique, but it needs preparation as far as I have seen. Okay?
In Buddhism, they talk about the witness.
This is exactly what I meant when I was talking about Vipassana, and the next subtle level is Chittanupassana, that means observing the Chitta. Chitta means the mind. This is you free your most basic attention, and that is the witness, and the witness can dissolve and enter the kingdom of heaven when I use this kind of language. So there comes a certain level when you proceed where you cannot proceed any further, because we can never produce God. We can never produce truth, but we can be available for truth when we are on that level and at the outer limit of our ability. That is true surrender. True surrender is not creating nice devotional emotions. It's to give yourself completely into one process that can bring you home. Home means this wholeness, where we actually ever are. It's only because we are identified with our mind, with our history, with our past, with our expectations towards future. We think we are restricted to what we perceive as person.
Suppose I can witness my own mind thinking all kinds of things. Now, this witness is not the self, is it not?
No. No one comes to the Father except through I am. He didn't say through me, But he said the I am is the passage. And this I am is developed when you learn to observe your breath. You learn to observe without interfering, without reacting. Then you give up the tensions of the controller. And that is bringing out the state of a witness. It's a state, it's still a mental state, it's not the self. But this is so, when it becomes very mature, it's so refined that it can easily be taken in by truth. I would express it, because you go there, it's not a voluntary act, but we can, all our activity that goes outside, that wants to prove itself, that wants to be someone, that is egotistical, moves away from the Father or from this wholeness. So when you train this witness consciousness, is on the borderline, no one comes to me except through this I am. Christ was not top person there. He was describing what is true for each one of us. So a mind that is merely watching, the ego strengthens itself by reacting, fighting, emotionally. So when you begin to watch, you can even now see, if you put your attention on something and rest it there, even if it's a mantra, the mind relaxes and recedes into this witnessing mode very naturally. It's nothing, separate. It's a quality of mind that is quiet, that is malleable, that is full. And this kind of state is easily being taken in by truth. It can sink into the heart.